Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Scam Aware Cyber Smart, supporting young people in a digital world. I'm Dr. Tracey West, Financial Education Manager at Ecstra Foundation, and I'm pleased to be your host. This webinar is part of our Financial Wellbeing Network, which shares insights and ideas to improve the financial health and wellbeing of all Australians. This week is also Scam Awareness Week, and the theme this year is the Scam Watch, Stop, Check, Protect. 3 simple steps to keep us all safe from scammers. What better time to turn our attention to the digital world our young people are growing up in, one that offers incredible opportunities, but also real online harms, particularly from deceptive and manipulative practices and scams. Today, we are focusing on 3 key threats. What are the deceptive and manipulative tactics being used in the online environment? Who is vulnerable? And what do we all need to know so that we can provide better support as parents, educators, and community workers? Before we begin, I would like to open our session and clear the space for our conversation by acknowledging that I join this meeting from the beautiful land of the Kombumerri people and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their enduring connections to land, sea, and community. I pay my respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Feel free to say hello in the chat and let us know which lands you are joining from. Now, we have a fantastic panel with us today, each with different perspectives to share in our conversation about online harms. So Chandni, Jess, and David, please join me on the screen. So Chandni Gupta is Deputy CEO and Digital Policy Director of the Consumer Policy Research Centre, a leading advocate for fairer markets for Australians. David Lacey is the founder and CEO of IDCARE, a frontline organisation helping individuals and businesses respond to scams, identity theft, and cybercrime. And Jess Wilson is CEO of Good Things Australia, a national leader in digital inclusion and community digital literacy programs. I'm going to draw out of our panelists as much as I can to understand online harms and what can be done. And then I'm going to turn them over to you, the audience, to respond to our questions in the chat. So please send through your questions or comments as we go. So first, I'm going to ask you, Chandni. And here on the screen, as I click it over, we have 3 reports that you have been involved in. Congratulations on these reports. They are really worth a read. I want to share something that happened last week. When I was leaving the dentist with my 11-year-old daughter, they had given her a hot chocolate to go with marshmallows. And I made a comment that the hot chocolate might be a strategy they employ to keep their customers for longer. And she said, "Isn't that just how the world works?" I raise this because the point you make in the Made to Manipulate report is that there is a danger of entrenching the manipulative and deceptive practices to the point where they are the norm and we come to expect them. Tell us about your research and these manipulative and deceptive practices.
Well, Tracey, I have to say your daughter is very astute, but it also just shows exactly how much of the concept is now normalized. The online world, it promises us so much choice, the choice for what you want, when you want it, how you want it. So at a click of a button, you can have what you want delivered to your door in minutes and to your inbox in seconds. And my research over the last 3 years has really been about seeing what this choice is actually costing us and whether this choice is actually even a real reality. So dark patterns, deceptive design, manipulative design, these are all names given to design features that are embedded into our websites and apps and purely to influence our decision, our choices, our experience. And it's often not in our best interest. And they're really, really common. It's the countdown timer that pressures you to take that great deal only for it to turn up again. And this is known as creating a scarcity queue. Or it's a pre-ticked selections that mean you share more of your personal information with more companies, which we've termed in our research as the data grab. Or one of my favorites to loathe, and definitely many of us can relate to, is subscription traps, which is one in the design dark patterns world we call the Hotel California effect, a namesake of the Eagles song. So if you know it, you know it. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And it employs tactics like making a cancellation process so difficult to either find or to navigate that you actually put off canceling your subscription, and you actually put up with paying for something you don't need or want. But what we've found is that common practice shouldn't be confused with good practice. So 3 years ago, when we at CPRC actually started probing into this issue, our first piece of work, Due by Design, we really wanted to quantify the harm. And in our consumer research, we showed participants examples and descriptions of various types of dark patterns, and we measured the recall rate. Tracey, actually, if you could go to the next slide, you'll see the various different things that came up. So when we asked our 2,000 research participants to list the names of businesses they could recall using dark patterns, it was clear that dark patterns are everywhere. And I think many of who are in on the webinar today would recognize a lot of these that are on your screen right now. But it's not just about recall. And if we go to the next slide, our research actually found that 83% of Australians had experienced one or more negative consequences from dark patterns. Our more recent research into subscription traps has actually found that 3 in 4 Australians have had difficulty trying to cancel out of subscriptions, and 1 in 10 sadly give up and continue paying for something they don't need or want. So the cost is high. In fact, last October, I was on my Churchill Fellowship, and as part of that, I was meeting with the European Commission, and they shared with me work that they had recently done, which was a digital fairness fitness check. I actually really love. They actually do health checks on their laws in the EU, which is so good. But the results revealed that unfair practices such as deceptive designs are costing EU consumers 7.9 billion euros, while the cost of actually to comply isn't more than 737 million euros. So while each dark pattern interaction might feel like an inconvenience or an annoyance, cumulatively, we are actually talking of significant harm.
Certainly is concerning. And what about young people? I mean, surely they're not caught up in these subscription type traps, or how do these dark patterns impact young people? And is it different for them?
So unfortunately, the stats actually only peak for younger consumers. So Tracey, if you go to the next slide, you'll be able to see just exactly what those harms are looking like. For example, younger consumers are 65% more likely than the national average to unintentionally spend more, many of whom have probably never experienced a digital world without deception. I just want that to sink in. There's generations out there using online tech at the moment who are online, who have never seen an internet devoid of dark patterns. So it goes back to what your daughter said, that it isn't just about isn't this how the world is? When I was studying IT back in the day, our professors actually used to tell us, create platforms where people come, get or find what they need, and then they get out. That's the kind of efficiency that we were being taught at universities. It's definitely not the case now. In fact, almost the inverse is true, where we are being manipulated to stay longer and spend more. We actually tend not to hear the phrase customer is king. And it's because in many instances now, customer is captive. They're stuck in a digital world that was never designed with them in mind. And for younger consumers, it couldn't be more truth in that. We recently actually did a back of the napkin conservative calculation based on our stats that if people were just losing $5 in subscriptions that they couldn't cancel or had trouble cancelling in some way, Australians would actually be losing $46 million a year. The impact is huge.
That's really interesting, and it's really hard for us to discern between businesses that are doing the right thing by us and businesses that are using these dark patterns to acquire us as customers and retain us at all costs, isn't it? It's hard to really make those choices because we do derive some sort of benefit from whether it's online games or these online shopping platforms. But besides these financial costs, what other impacts are these practices having on us?
So you're very true that it's hard to discern the dark patterns, but even if you did, or even if you were able to actually identify them, there's actually very little you can do, because often that's how they lock you in. They lock you in either with the tech or with processes or with terms and conditions. It's designed basically where even if you were picking out all the dark patterns, you could see if that was the only place you can get access to a product or service, you are locked in. So the fact of the matter is actually the financial impact is just the tip of the iceberg. I know that's the one often we politicians take a huge interest in, but there are massive privacy impacts in how data is collected through the use of these tactics. But then there's the issue of how these dark patterns are impacting our well-being overall. In our gaming research we released earlier this year, where we looked at the impact of dark patterns on online gaming, much of which is actually exposed to young Australians as well, we found that while close to half experienced some financial loss, more than half had their privacy compromised in some way, and almost 2/3 noted that it actually took a toll on their well-being. Dark patterns inherently, they have a cascading, almost cumulative effect. They are designed to wear us down, and there is a lot of shame associated with the outcome because consumers can't identify the harm, but they feel the shame because they're the ones, for example, who clicked that button. And when it comes to emerging tech, that asymmetry in both information and power is going to be even more of a challenge for consumers to navigate as AI and immersive tech become even more of a norm of our consumer experience. So in those kind of virtual immersive worlds or fully AI-driven platforms, basically dark patterns will no longer be static and visible. So like the ones you saw before, you can pick them out, but they'll be dynamic and non-visual, hyper-personalized for a market of one. So more and more, the harm is very much no longer just about money. It's the distress caused by constantly being put through a digital maze when you want help, or feeling the digital fatigue because you're being manipulated at every turn, or there's the erosion of trust because you don't know where or how your data is being used. Basically, I think being a consumer in our digital economy today, and certainly for the younger generation, is going to be as taxing as a full-time job, or at least a side hustle that none of us have signed up for.
Oh, that is such a good point. I actually tell my daughter, who doesn't have a phone yet, but obviously wants one, that it's a full-time job responding to emails, checking your notifications, all of that sort of thing. So I try and dissuade her with that kind of language, but still it's yeah, relentless. David, I might bring you into the conversation if that's okay to talk to the work you're doing at IDCARE in relation to scams and the impacts they're having on people. Chandni has been telling us about this hypermarketing tactics in online environments, which are annoying and frustrating, but we do get some benefit from these legitimate businesses. But scams are quite a different beast, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, Tracy, and thanks for inviting me along today. I think the motive is slightly different, although predominantly financially based for those that are committing these crimes, but doing so in a criminal way. So they're looking for people to perform an action, as most marketing campaigns are, and the action that they're looking for people to perform might be to part with their money. It may be to part with access to established accounts like their banking account or their telco account or their social media account or emails. It might be motivated from a perspective of wanting to get access uh, to enable other crimes. So it might be to convince people to set up bank accounts in order to launder money or crypto wallets. Um, so it's quite insidious, and the motives obviously are criminal, but the actual tasks and activities that they're wanting to get people to perform, which we call scam compliance, uh, can be for a variety of activities or indeed directly to obtain money or your financial or identity information.
And are there any conditions on which people can be more vulnerable to a scam? This might be putting you on the spot, but
Yeah.
like Chandni talked a lot about that cognitive load that we're experiencing when we see these opportunistic marketing tactics put at us and we're trying to navigate that. Um, what do you know around those conditions that people might be going through in terms of load, cognitive load or emotional load, that might make them
Yeah.
a
So,
better target? Is that the language I should use?
well, there's definitely a volume of people from across Australia that come to IDCARE that uh, are what we call victims of plausible deception. So the tactics tend to mirror legitimate economy tactics because they're wanting people to not necessarily invest energy in thinking through what they're seeing or hearing or being requested. So they're using, they're stealing imagery of logos that we all know, whether it be banks or telcos or government agencies. So they're using markers that you know Chandni mentioned before, that they're using the same techniques and tactics. If there's 100 million emails or phone calls being made this week by scammers coming into the country, and it's about an impersonation of a well-known bank or a well-known government agency, there is a percentage of the Australian population who are legitimately engaged in that communication with that legitimate entity,
Mm.
who will look at that communication and go, yeah, that makes sense, and not invest thinking and energy in trying to understand whether or not it's a scam. So people who are victims of plausible deception cruelly are engaged in the conversation with the brand that's being impersonated and don't think twice because of it. So they're
Mm.
relying on heuristics, they're relying on their brain cutting corners because they see things that go, well, that must be legitimate. I'm not going to even
Like
get into this.
Likewise, I know Choice did a bit of research on scams relating to the use of bank accounts. And half of their respondents that had been victimized of a scam said they did take some action to check the website, to verify the identity, and still they thought they'd done sufficient checking of that bit of information that they could, and then still proceeded following the scammer's directions. So
Yeah.
even when we are aware and are taking some steps to check, they are getting so good now. So in the old days, it used to be looking out for um, errors in your phishing emails and things, but these now it's moved on so much more than that, hasn't it? They're so good at replicating these trusted organizations and websites and so tech savvy, these scammers.
Yeah, I mean, the advice we were giving people 10 years ago just doesn't work today.
No. And there's other
People, oh,
tactics like,
check the URL, check the website.
yeah, like there's other tactics like creating urgency and pressure, fear of missing out. So, if you don't buy it now, they'll all be gone. Everybody else has this. They're pretty
Yeah.
well, that's a well-torn path with scammers, isn't it? So looking at young people, let's have a look at a little bit of data from ScamWatch here.
It
So I
is.
know that,
And
oh,
before there's a bit of a delay, I think. So I was just mentioning
yeah.
that I think Chandy was saying before that there's a shift in the marketing world more generally towards customer stickiness. So how
Mm.
do you keep customers for longer? And that's from a company's perspective worth money to them. That adds to their value, where they've got what we call sticky customers. Scammers are the same. So scammers anticipate a point in time where you're going to disbelieve, and they create a scam around your disbelief, whether that be impersonating your bank because they know who you bank with, to go,
Mm.
we suspect there's a fraudulent transaction here. Do you want us to investigate? And of course, you know,
No.
because you've just been involved in a scam, that that's potentially legitimate.
And yes, and those re-victimization scams where they know that you have been scammed and then they're offering you follow-up help and support to manage the effects of that scam. They're also scammers. So it's very difficult. So let's look at some data, David. I know IDCARE are contributing to the intelligence and data sharing. This is the ScamWatch data, so I know it is a subset of data.
Yep.
But the ScamWatch website is really good with their data dashboard. You can have a play around with it. And it does show some stats for people under the age of 18. So when we look at this data, we see that young people are reporting, another keyword there, scams, and they're contacted via social media, text messaging, and emails primarily. And the top scams for them are online shopping, classifieds, and threats by reporting volume and losses. So can you tell us a little bit more around what you're seeing at IDCARE with young people and perhaps about some of these types of scams, what they involve?
Yeah, sure. Very similar statistics. So IDCare gets a feed from ScamWatch. So if people report to ScamWatch, they can click a button and says, I'd like to talk to an IDCare case manager about what I've experienced. Many other people report to ScamWatch because they've seen a scam but not fallen victim to the scam itself. But the data that you're revealing there, Tracy, is very similar to what we see. So for younger people, very much online shopping, so things that we see on social media or marketplaces where they're selling products or things that are in high demand. So during COVID, pets, for example, were in high demand. The puppy. So we saw a kind of a puppy scam growth during that period, and there's those that fall for those scams that are both in the seller's shoes and in the buyer's shoes. So in the buyer's shoes, the scammer who pretends to be the seller may be saying, well, I'd love to get that puppy to you, but it's going to be costing you freight. And we like to pay that, we like you to pay that up front or insurance. So they twist it in that way. If it's a buyer, and you're the seller, you're the legitimate seller, and the scammer's the buyer. The scammer may reverse it on you and say, "Well, I do want to buy it, but I need you to front up the freight." So they'll look for ways of which to manipulate of the buying and the selling of the transaction. Websites themselves are a key thing for this. So we see a lot of young people finding themselves on websites that have malicious code and malware on them. They look perfectly legitimate. It goes to the point that you were making before. It's so much harder today to pick scams versus legitimate sites. So we certainly encourage people to use browser protection. We can have a chat about that later. We also see employment scams a lot impacting younger people. So this is where they're going to legitimate employment websites or again through social media. And an ad might say 9 times out of 10, it's work from home, flexible hours, commission-based, immediate start. And people are attracted to that, particularly if you're studying or you're at school and you want that flexibility. And then we find that people go through a quasi recruitment process. Funnily enough, criminals don't tend to ask for your tax file number, by the way. Legitimate employers do, just heads up. And some may attend training sessions where they're asked to provide remote access to their device. And that inflates the risk, obviously, to the person because the criminals want to harvest what's on your laptop or phone. And then it could be, Tracy, could you help us out moving money to repay an executive who's done some traveling? We just need you to set up a bank account because we're wanting to move our operations to Australia. We're not quite there yet. And then you might think that's legitimate. Go down to the bank, set up a bank account. They transfer money into your account and say, we want you to transfer you to another account through your account, take 10%. And we find with a lot of young people, they're coming home, they're sitting around the dinner table with mum and mum and dad are going, how's your first day at work? And they're explaining to what's happened. And mum and dad's gone, you've just laundered money for organised crime. And so there's this double whammy that the young person one, doesn't have a legitimate job, and two, has just committed an indictable offence, and they're a money mule. So we get a lot of parents calling IDCARE going, what do we even do now? We're afraid to go to police. We believe that my young person's just been involved in organised crime. So that's quite devastating. We do get a lot of that.
I mean, that's great. I think that the parents are picking up that that is what is happening. I'm sure for many parents, it's like, oh, that doesn't sound right. But they
Yes.
might not be able to put labels to it and identify that that is what is happening. So it's great, and in some families that is the case. And I know organizations like Maya have been caught up in those job scam
Yeah.
ads. And a lot of the time, I think it's important to talk about what happens is that the young person might see the ad on social media, respond to the message, provide the email, phone number. The scammer gets back to them, moves them to the encrypted messaging app. So that's an important red flag, because the companies associated with encrypted messaging apps aren't as involved, I guess, in the detection and prevention of scams work that other companies like Facebook and Meta are actively involved in picking up these sorts of words in the content on their messaging and on their posts. So moving them to an encrypted app and then getting their bank details, maybe giving them a set of tasks to complete, giving them a trust payment. So they're putting a little bit of money into the account and then asking for more money to complete training from the worker to complete the training or to do something else. So there's a variety of ways that some of these scams can work, or to extort people. I was wondering if we should cover threats a little bit, because young men report more instances of being exposed to threats than girls do. And particularly sextortion, I think, is a real issue within a subgroup of the threat-based scams. So did you want to talk a little bit to sextortion? Is IDCARE seeing a lot of that in your work?
Yeah, it's in the
Or
top three that we
threat-based
see for
scams?
younger people. Yeah, definitely. And a lot of it comes through still via email. So it's an email threat saying that we've got imagery of you or sensitive information. If you're not willing to pay us money, we're going to let your contacts know because we've got access to your device or your email account. They might share a password through that email to prove that they've got access. A lot of the information that these criminals are sharing in setting up almost the deception to convince the person that they've actually got access and they've actually got imagery, or they've got things that are young people might perceive to be compromising, um, is information that they're harvesting through other data breaches. So they haven't actually got any access at all. It's just that they're using a little bit of detail to try and just convince people that they've got a lot more detail. And sadly, that impacts people in a really extreme ways. Like we've had people that have lent on our cyber psychology services and engaging with our clinical psychologists around the mental health impacts of that. People feel quite isolated. Obviously they're feeling very vulnerable and they don't want to be, compromised or exposed. And the way that we find people detect this is they're effectively cutting and pasting or looking for like emails that others have posted online. Like there's a real crowdsourcing detection element to this type of scam. So if anyone's listening that are receiving emails like this, one way you can search to see whether it's legitimate or not, and by the way, most of it's not, is just do a search online and put in some of the content that you're receiving on the email, and you'll see other examples of that. But yeah, it's certainly up there, Tracey, in terms of volume that we're seeing.
That's a good tip. Thanks, David. All right, Jess, I'll bring you in now. So let's turn to a slightly different but deeply connected topic of digital inclusion. I'm going to put to you a quote from Chandni's report on deceptive and manipulative practices. So individuals are living in a digital inclusion-exclusion paradox, swinging between the pendulum of needing and wanting to access products and services online yet often unable to do so without compromising on their privacy. And furthermore, the erosion of trust in online product and service providers following a scam experience is leading to digital self-exclusion, sorry. So tell us a little bit about the work that Good Things undertakes and who in our community is digitally excluded and what this means for them.
Sure, and thanks so much for having me. I'm coming to you from the Gadigal country today, beautiful world that we live in, and very grateful for the First Nations people who've looked after this land for so long. So yeah, there is a digital divide, and I know it's really interesting it's fascinating to be listening to Chandni and David talking about the impacts of scams, but we know actually that 1 in 4 people in Australia are digitally excluded. And I think the people on the call today probably know this very well from the work that they do every day, that people, don't have either, they don't have access. So in regional Australia, they may not have access to the internet in the way that they need to. They may not be able to afford it. And in particular, this continues to be a challenge for low-income families to be able to afford not just the internet connection, but the devices that they need to support their children and their families to be able to access education and learning and work. So, or they may not have skills and confidence, so the ability to be able to participate safely and confidently in the online world. And I suppose that's what Good Things is all about, is making sure that we can close the digital divide so no one is left behind. Because as much as there are terrible things about the internet, we cannot avoid it. And in fact, if people are missing out on it, they're not able to do the things that we all take for granted, like be on a webinar at lunchtime, like we are today, and to learn from other people, connect with other people. We know particularly for young people, the opportunity to connect with others that are like them is a really significant benefit from being online. But the people that are most likely to be digitally excluded are the people that are excluded in other ways as well often. So it is older people. We know people often say to me, are you supporting older people? It's like, yes, we support older people. So supporting older people, people with disabilities also are more likely to be digitally excluded, as are people from refugee and migrant backgrounds, First Nations communities, and people on low income or who have low employment, so low access to the workspace, where that we continue to learn every day about the use of technology and the different roles that it plays in our lives, and the things that we do every day are absolutely rolled up in technology. So I think those are the people that are most likely to be digitally excluded. And I suppose the work that we do at Good Things is to try and overcome particularly the skills and confidence piece. And so we deliver a range of different programs through our community network of about 4,000 partners across Australia, who we provide support to deliver programs to people in their communities so that they do feel more skilled, they do feel more confident, and they do feel more safe online. So maybe if you just go to the next slide, I'll just talk a bit about what that looks in practice. But then I'm really keen to kind of move to that piece around scams, because I think, for community organisations, we have grant programs. So for those of you out there that are not part of our network and you want to deliver programs to people in your community, we have a range of small grants that are available. We create and deliver tools and learning content for people to use. And we partner with people who do as well. So people like the eSafety Commission, I just keep thinking about all of the stuff that they do, which is fantastic, around providing information to people about how to stay safe online, and if things go wrong, how they can support alongside people like David at IDCARE. We provide support to people, and then they decide how they want to deliver those programs to people in their community. So we have some people want to do that in a group because that works well in terms of social connection for those different groups of people. Some people do it one-on-one because there's individual support that's needed for people, and some people do it, in kind of drop-in sessions and that kind of thing. So there's a range of different ways that people, but I suppose what I'm passionate about as somebody that's come from the social impact sector is that actually I think we can't avoid being part of this anymore. Like we actually do need to provide that support to people around knowing how to get online, how to do that safely, what are the things, because actually we're the trusted people for a lot of the people that are accessing our support. And what we know about having people experiencing scams is that they want to go to somebody they trust to talk to them about it. We want people to say, I think this looks a bit strange. Is it strange? Is this a scam? Is this something that's a bit dodgy? Or is it not? And if you don't have that kind of group of people around you, you need somewhere to go. And so our community partners do play that role for people in their community. We know stories of where, an older man was going to a community partner to learn about stuff, happened to be walking down the street and saying, oh, I'm just going to the bank, and saw the person that's been supported. I'm just going to the bank to transfer this money. Oh, what's that about? Oh, it's the something. Anyway, it turned out it was a complete scam. And because they know each other, she could say, I think that's a scam. Let's investigate that more before you do that thing. And he saved money. So I think there's the opportunity to provide trusted spaces where people learn together. They learn something and they can share their knowledge, and share when things are going wrong is really, really important.
Fabulous. You have a few more slides.
I do.
Here.
I suppose this one is really, we know, can I go back to the next one? Sorry, the one before that, Tracey, sorry. Just in terms of the economic benefit, we know that we've looked at some of the impacts of scams on people, but actually the impact of missing out on being part of the digital world, we just don't want people to go, well, you know what? Because I might be scammed, I'm not going to participate. So that's what we want to try and avoid. So it's that real balance, and I think that's something we deal with every day. Is like, how do we support people to feel confident enough to be participating, because there is a significant economic benefit to our society. And look, we know the social benefits. I'm always talking about the social benefits of people participating and making sure that they can participate fully in our society, which is a digital society today. But some people really like the economics of it as well, particularly government. And so we did an economic benefits report. And this is actually looking at the 1 in 10 people who are highly digitally excluded. If we were able to overcome digital exclusion for those 1 in 10, it would be close to $500 million worth of benefit, economic benefit to Australians' economy every year. And that's because people would be better able to participate in employment, better socially connected, access to health care and learning and education. And so, you can scan the report. There is a lot more detail I could talk to, but I won't do that today. So I think, this is really why we want to make sure that people are still participating, and why digital inclusion and digital literacy programs are so important. So the next slide is really just, about some of the programs we do and what we've found across all of our different programs. We run programs for older people, including young mentors programs where, young people support older people, support people with intellectual disability and ensuring that they have the skills and confidence to be able to participate in society digitally. Refugee and migrant women as well. And the number one learning goal for across all of those programs is, how do I stay safe online? Like, that is the number one reason why people come to learn more, is because they want to know how to stay safe. And what we have found is that, through these kind of community-based programs where people are going to a space where they feel supported, where they feel confident to be able to say, I don't know, that they have increased their online safety, they increase their digital skills, they increase their confidence to use tech. Although the reason we think that one's a bit lower than the others is because when you start to find out more about technology, you go, oh my goodness, I actually know a lot less than I thought I did. But ultimately, the last two around increased social connections are so important, because that's the outcome of this. People are better able to stay connected to people they know and love. They're better able to learn together in a community, and so they're building those face-to-face connections as well as the online ones. And ultimately, everyday independence is so important. So people are saying that they can do things for themselves rather than being required for others. I'll just quickly go to a couple of the quotes that we've got here, because I think it's all very well me standing up here talking about this, but actually this is from one of our community partners, and it's from our Digital Sisters program, which supports refugee and migrant women, and they were really one of the key outcomes for them was being able to say to people, well, what are the scams that are coming through? For people to be aware of the kinds of scams that are coming through are really important. And one of the key things I think from Digital Sisters was that they were really focused on how do we support our kids? Because if parents don't feel confident themselves, then they're not going to be able to support their kids to be able to stay safe online as well. So it was one of the key things that came out of Digital Sisters was that people feel more confident to support their children in the online world as well. And the next one, which is a kind of a different one, which is interesting, I think as well, was that actually for some women, their reliance on their children to do things like online banking, to actually take over that role of being online for people. Actually, the building in their confidence to be doing this themselves actually means that they take responsibility of that. We have heard about some younger people and children of people taking advantage and using people's money and bank cards and that kind of thing, and doing the online banking themselves, which because the parent doesn't feel confident to do that. And so I think one of the key things is that they then were able to go, you know what, I feel confident enough to do that myself now. So weren't being taken advantage of as a result of that. So I think that's, I suppose I'll just very quickly talk about AI, impacts of AI, because I think we all talk about AI, but actually when we did some research into this, 70% of our partners, and this is actually a year ago now, so we're doing this research again now because I think it's going to be different. But 70% of our community partners said nobody is asking about AI. So it's really important that we don't assume that people know about what's going on, even if it's a conversation that's happening all the time with us. And then I'll just highlight the media literacy report as well, which is really, really useful, and kind of saying that actually it is one of the things is that people are seeing this stuff more. And that they're starting to feel, less confident to understand what kind of information is coming to them as a result of the impacts of AI. So just to finish off my section is that I think, it's really important that we are able to support the people in our community. So whether it's young people or it's parents, to feel more confident online. And we have a whole lot of resources available that people can access and use. And there's a QR code. There's a whole lot of stuff there around learning games that people can use. There's tip sheets around how to keep kids safe online. There's games that you can play around, can I spot whether this is AI generated or not, which I can tell you is harder than you think. So I think, it is really important that we in the sector are, helping the people that we support, but we want to make sure we're helping you to do that. So there's some great resources that are available for people to use as well.
Well, look, that was a lot, and thank you so much, Jess, for all the work you're doing with Digital Sisters and your other programs, as well as the report that quantified the benefits of digital inclusion. I thought that was a really great report and well worth a read. So for those participants at home, and to Neil, your question that I see in the chat there are so many new things happening all the time in the world of scams. We've gone through a couple of examples with David, but I think what would be benefit for perhaps David or myself to talk to is where to go to keep updated with scams. So ScamWatch and signing up to their e-newsletters, of course, and alerts is really important. But there are other key sites as well that issue alerts, as well as your telco will have a list of alerts. So whether you're Telstra or Optus or any other provider. So there's a lot of sites now which will list new and evolving scams. We did talk through some key tactics that scammers use. So I think those red flags are really good to be mindful of, to keep an eye out for. And then here I have a getting help resources page. So this will be in the slide deck that you get at the end. Who to go and in what circumstances. So there is a list there. But we are coming up to question time, which is really exciting. So please, for those participants playing along at home, put your questions in the chat so that we can respond to them. And while you are thinking of some new questions, I will just say quickly that at Ecstra Foundation, we have a free Talk Money workshop program that goes into schools. We have a variety of workshop modules available for schools, and we have a new one out called Becoming Scam Savvy. In that workshop, we talk about, we use the Scam Watchers Stop, Check, Protect framework. Within the stop step, we talk about this really fun acronym that we use called FUEL, which are those highlighting those tactics that scammers use. So the fear, urgency, excitement, and legitimacy. And we talk about scammers pouring fuel on the fire. So we go through the stop, check, protect steps, and then we apply those to a few scenarios in this workshop. We have a comprehensive teacher resource with lots of links and some fact sheets available. So all of that information is freely available on the Talk Money with Ecstra Foundation website. And a nice feature of our resources is a Getting Help section. So the teachers and students have this easily accessible in their classroom as a really good resource. All right, so hopefully we are getting some questions through to the chat. We do have plenty of time, so please put in your questions. I have some backup questions, of course. So while those questions are coming through, how about this question I'll put to the panel? How is the government working to rebuild and retain trust in the digital economy? So what is currently being done that you know of? David, I thought maybe you could have a go at that one. So what is going on at the government level in terms of this preventing scams from happening?
Well, the big change in the last 12 months is the scam prevention framework. So I've been working in this environment for about 25 years, and certainly the last 2 years, I've never seen as much activity as what's happened pretty much in the last 24 months. So the scam prevention framework really puts on the hook the banks, the telcos, and the digital companies in lifting their game when it comes to developing their own individual organizations scam prevention program, which includes how they're going to look after people who've been scammed, how they're going to prevent customers from being scammed, and the type of interventions that they need to put in place, the sharing of scam information, which is obviously one way to defeat scams, because people are scams because you don't know what the deception is. So that's a really important pillar to this. We'd certainly like to see at IDCARE there to be an increase in the number of industries that are within that framework, and also include government. So, perversely, we've seen banks start to increase their investment in scam prevention and response. We're actually starting to see a shift towards the Commonwealth in terms of the Commonwealth being targeted by scammers. So it means the victims of scams are going to have connections with each of those different sectors across that system. And we're really keen to see the standards around response lift for consumers.
Great answer, David. Just a quick follow-up. Should we report a scam even if we haven't lost money?
Yes, is the answer to that question. And that's why most of the reporting actually coming into ScamWatch is from people that aren't scammed. So ScamWatch is an amazing mechanism, and that's the whole point of ScamWatch when it started. Delia Rickard, who used to lead ScamWatch, is now on the IDCARE board. I'm not saying it because she's on the board, but she saw there was a gap in what we're doing as a country in amplifying awareness around the latest scams. And Neil, that's another point for you to jump onto, is obviously the ScamWatch side that Tracey mentioned in terms of the resources that are going to be shared. But the primary motive early on for ScamWatch was to be a bit of a mouthpiece as to what scams are impacting the community, so the community was more aware of what to look for.
Can I just add to that, David? I think that it's brilliant that people are doing that, because for some people that are digitally excluded or don't feel confident to use like technology or online forms, like the ScamWatch form is a problem. And so, it's really important that other people are supporting. It's one way you can support others, is to help them. If you know somebody that's been scammed or you know of a scam, to kind of help report that. Because it is definitely one of the things we get through our phone line, because we have a helpline for older people looking for support in the community, not responding to scams, but looking for how they can get support around digital literacy. And we get a lot of calls from people who, are just looking for a phone number to get someone to help them. We refer them to you, which is fantastic. But I think, that the ScamWatch one, for other people that do feel confident, it's really important to do that, so that that those who don't feel as confident are also supported in that way.
Is it true as well that under the scam prevention framework, social media companies, telcos are obliged to make reporting easier? So they need to
Accessibility,
yeah. So now if you see an ad on Facebook Marketplace that looks like a scam, you can report that ad straight to Facebook, who are obliged to investigate. Yeah, so that's great. All right, let's have a look at the chat here. So what should businesses be doing to help their customers know when they're dealing with a legitimate business, to help people avoid scams? And maybe actually, Chandni, if we're talking about legitimate businesses, so we've talked about reporting scams here, but you talked about these online deceptive and manipulative practices. So can people report when they are being forced to be logged in to a particular platform? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about reporting there.
So, I mean, you could report, but I think it's a really great question about how what businesses can be actually doing. One of the authors that I spoke to as part of my fellowship, Nerial, he's written Hooked and Undistractable, and he talks about doing the regret test, where you as a company put yourself through the same processes and pathways that you put your customer through. And you then look at what those processes are, whether it's persuasion, actually persuading them to do something they'd actually wanted to do, or whether it's bordering on coercion. And when businesses actually do that, they'll be able to see exactly what pathways need to have good friction. So friction where you're actually stopping a customer to go, are you about to do the right thing? Is this something that could lead to an unintended negative consequence? So for example, with banks, who then, if you are transferring money to a new account, the pop-up comes up saying, are you sure? Do you trust this account? All of those mechanisms that add good friction, as opposed to adding friction where a person has made the decision, for example, cancelling a subscription, but you're jamming in friction for the sake of it. So it's those aspects. I think the regret test is a really great one for businesses to kind of put a mirror to their own processes and see what customers are actually undergoing. A lot of businesses use behavioral insights. And what we need them to do is to use behavioral insights for good. And we've seen, I've met with some businesses who are actually going really into the minutiae of like how someone logs in, how are they actually finding a particular product or service, what are they actually doing when they get there, what's the barrier that they're coming across, and then looking at that data and going, well, how can we make it better for the customer? So for those businesses, they're actually thinking about it from a trust first perspective, very much a consumer-centric perspective. They've decided that they're going to put trust over tactics as part of their ethos of how they operate. But when I spoke to some of these businesses, they actually said they know they could make more money, if they ended up employing the dark patterns. So they're making a real conscious decision, and that goes back to governments having frameworks in place, so having laws and regulations and enforcement in place that ensures that you don't have to rely on a business having good ethos or having a particular model in place to actually do the right thing. It becomes the norm and it becomes good practice all around.
Thanks, Chandni. And we have maybe a related question in the chat. My 13-year-old's Roblox account got scammed yesterday. Where would the best place to report this kind of scam be? I'm not sure I know the answer to that one. Can anyone help?
David and Jess may have the actual answer. I still assume it's ScamWatch, but I also say it's worth also bringing those kind of issues on online gaming to Department of Communications as well. They do look at some of those other broader aspects of requirements that online games should have. So if you've got the resources and if you're able to do so, I think letting different parts of government know that this is an issue is definitely a way that you can get more of that message across, that these issues are not in isolation and it's not one, but this is an indication of a bigger problem.
Really interesting. Look, everybody, in the interest of time, which I do hate running out of time, we will need to bring this webinar to a close. And I do want to thank you all really sincerely for sharing your time today and your insights, Chandni, David, and Jess, and for your work in this space. It's really important work. We're glad you're here doing what you do to help us, our family members, and extended community. So really sincere, bottom of the heart, thank you for all that you do. So for everybody participating today, you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording, the slides, and some key resources, some links in there. If you are doing professional development and you need a certificate of participation, we can also provide that, and details to stay connected with Extra's work. So stay scam aware, cyber smart, and we'll look forward to seeing you at another Financial Wellbeing Network event soon. Have a great afternoon. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.